Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the leading employee benefits and engagement platform.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. And today I'm really excited to have Amit Kataria, who's CHRO at Hanu Software. Amit is responsible for rewards and recognition, talent acquisition, employee engagement, among other roles. Amit is an alumni of Amity Business School. And in this session, we'll talk about how HR can build resilience in workplace. Welcome to the show, Amit.
Thank you, Rohit. It's a pleasure to have you hosting me here. It's been fantastic. And I've been following Vantage Circle. Thanks, Rose.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. And I wanted to understand, how did you get into HR and what got you interested to get into HR?
Very interesting. So what happened, Rohit? I did not deliberately decided to be in HR. That something happened in the course of education, or I said the master's I was doing. So from the background, I am actually a master's in computer application. So when I completed my MCA, I got placed in a top tier software services company, and we went into that onboarding session. So all day, all out, I was seeing HR people, having that whole power center with them. We were all waiting for a whole week in the boardrooms, this, there, and that. That's what we decided that being that into function which is called HR would do something which I'm aspiring to. So that's how the whole idea started. So I took a break and then I started preparing for human resource management and then switched to pursuing my MBA and master's in human resource. And that's how it's all ever since. There was no looking back, and that's how it is.
Interesting. And, in this particular podcast, I really want to talk about what is resilience and how do you build resilience in workplaces?
Yeah, so resilience for me, if you go with the diction and literal meaning, in a simple form, is about how you bounce back, right, from the difficulties you face, from all the adversity of life. And if you talk about in general life, professional life, whatever scenario you want to have it, it's just about that how you cope with those difficulties which are thrown to you, and how do you reestablish yourself. And that's what my take is. It's just about simply bouncing back to the favorable part of life where you are happy. And that's how I perceive it in general sense.
Right. And how do you look at building, such resilient teams in companies, especially during the times of COVID, where we're working remotely and the obvious stressful situations because you're not meeting with your fellow teammates, and obviously there's something like a Zoom fatigue also there. Right? But how do you look at building such resilient teams?
Yeah, it is very relevant to this topic, Rohit. But before that, I want to touch upon a few things which will probably give you context and base that how HR can build a resilient team in the workspace and all. So human race in general is very resilient. And I would, when you compare to all, the human evolvement, the process, how we are today in the current age, it's just because of the resilience that we are here, right? So we are the smartest race on the earth. We have been most developed around it. So that's how things are. But when we talk about that we are more resilient, how we became this. So we go back and when we were discussing and when within the fraternity, when you touch upon this topic, two things come very apparent. There are controllable and uncontrollable factors with it. Resilience is what you can control. And that's how the whole idea of being it, how we want to conclude it within HR space to build more resilient comes to this. So this is one factor which you have actually 100% control on it, that how do you want to bounce back. The rest of the factors which you may or may not have a control on, you can influence or not influence. But resilience is one thing which I feel is the most controllable factor among that. So how do we do that? Our few of the, I would say strategize. I would say that there are a few things you can slowly work upon, and then you can achieve that. So for HR, I give the most priority to one fact. It's about your mental agility. And what I mean by that, there is scope of it. So when you say it's not every time you have favorable condition at your workplace, right? It's not that every day your boss will come to you and say, hey, you did a great work, Amit. You did a great work, Rohit. Kudos, this and that. There may be, and there are good possibilities that sometimes there is adverse feedback. Sometimes there is bashing as well, right? You don't feel that happy about it. As we are very emotional people, there would be a feeling of sad. There would be a feeling of anger. You probably be feeling confused. But what I see is your mental agility is the most important factor here. You don't need to stay in that headspace. You need to come out of that ASAP from all those emotions such as sadness, angry, confusion I talk about. And once you come out of it, you have to build that whole agility around you. So how it works? So there are two things which I want to touch upon. So when you talk about mental agility, and as a humans, there are two factors which are very important to this respect. One is reacting, and second is responding. So since we as people and in workplace something happens, our instinctive nature is to react, right?
Yeah.
As resilience tells us to respond, but not to react. So what I mean by responding is, so if you take those emotions out and if you take that instinct to react, you will be more objective, right? So it's a journey from reacting to responding. That means from being instinctive and giving, anything which comes to your mind, to be more focused and object-driven approach. And that's how I think this mental agility will come into it. Second, other than that, on the topic that how we can be more resilient and how HR can help, there are a few things which are very important to this. Like, we can build a handsome or robust work-life balance environment within the company. We can also focus on employee health. We can also build upon compassion within the work culture. So these are few factors combining. I would say that you have a better resilient team, and this is I think would work in the great sense of question you asked.
Right, and since we're in the COVID crisis, I wanted to understand how do you nurture relationships outside and inside workplaces, because I feel it is important to build relationships outside work culture, because you're just working non-stop, and there's not a very clear demarcation from life to work balance when you're working from home.
Right. As I just touched, that work-life balance is very, very important part of this resilient team. How do we do that? And I take from the practical example within Hanu itself. We being an IT company, we were having a very good automated in terms of whole systems of support like HR, finance, and all that. So we did not face much of a hurdle when we went 100% work from home. And when you say people are there, it does become monotonous at the time. It does become difficult to maintain that balance between work life. So what we did is, so earlier, let's say, as a typical week goes, we used to have fun Fridays, engagement activities, all the huddle spaces, touch upon and this and that. Ever since we went into lockdown and we went into complete work from home, we did not stop the engagement. Rather, we augmented it, right? So what it means that we augmented it, we doubled the frequency. What we did is we start touching to all our rock stars twice in a week, by phone, by emails. That would make sure that we hear their voice once at least in a week. Instead of giving in-premises engagement activities, we started conducting virtual games, right? We started conducting fun contests like decorating your desk, having that small dance competitions, having kids activities, all those which could be done virtually. And that's increased the engagement level to the previous level of Hanu. And I think it worked in favorable sense to us, that instead of feeling the impact that work from home became a yardstick in having a lesser productive workforce, we had a better production or productivity ratings during the lockdown and after that. So this is how I think work-life balance works. As a HR, you just don't need to stop when something like this happens. Rather, you have to work in direction to augment it and keep adding on to the morale and happiness of your employees.
Right, and I've also felt that it is very important to build a sense of trust and compassion for your colleagues. I wanted to understand how do you build compassion for your colleagues so that employees can work together and or create the organizational goal themselves.
So, okay, when you think about compassionate colleagues, compassionate work, it's about building it over the time, Rohit. It's not that you can do it over the night and say, okay, fine, now we have a compassionate workforce. You have to take that systematic approach, step-by-step thing. So as in general, your workforce became compassionate. So you need to assign what we did in Hanu. So you start with few things, which are you need to make mandatory time offs within a company. So as you get your time to think, right? It's not that you are always in that race of mind that you have to do this, that, whatever. When we talk about compassions building between the teams, it's about you associate with one person in your whole team sphere where you are given tasks to know everything about it. And that's what we do. So everybody in Hanu as a Rockstars knows that, okay, this is one person who's associated. You need to know everything. And it's all about delight. We make it, we have a statement called customer obsession in a positive sense. And we replicate that into our Rockstar obsession, which means I as a team member have to be compassionate enough to one person of whom we know everything about in general sense. So as anything happens with his or her life, at least one person is aware. And this is how you built it, because you feel that somebody is caring about you. And that means as a whole, organization cares about you. So we take those few steps, starting with when somebody comes on board, and keep building on those trust exercises where this culture of compassion builds over.
Right. And Amit, I was wondering, do you also believe employees should be given breaks, when they're working from remote, or how important are breaks and vacations and family time important for employees if they want to re-energize themselves?
Absolutely, Rohit. So, okay, if you think about break, I think it would pertain to work style of companies who want them to be at the desk for X time, right? We as a company believe in that approach. For us, it's 100 plus flexible environment. For us, it's very important that you do your tasks as your own will, but complete them as the KRA suggests, right? For us, it's not like monitoring anybody and having, okay, have you spent 8 hours, 9 hours on the desk or not? We never think about it, and we never do. So for Hanu, what we say is, okay, this is the assignment. This is what you are supposed to do. Do at your own discretion. But while doing that, you have to have, as it says, we give them and we encourage all our rock stars to take small breaks, participate in our exercises. As I said before, we do organize those engagement activities where you are called upon those meetings virtually, of course. So as it doesn't become monotonous to you. As an individual, you keep doing things at your personal front. But we as an organization also make sure that there are avenues, there are programs which run by us as a company where you are forced to be engaged on those activities. And yes, as you talk about mandatory time off, this and that, we do encourage that. But in whole scheme of these general practices, we don't stick to having somebody sit on desk for X number of hours or Y number of hours. But all we focus is that you do your your task assigned and accomplish your goals in whatever way you feel free and happy about it.
Correct. And is it possible for companies to track productivity and monitor performance? Especially during people who are working in COVID in a remote setup.
Okay, so I want to listen this more. That what do you mean by tracking the productivity? Then I'll probably be able to answer it better.
Yeah, by tracking productivity means like you rightly pointed out, that it is not possible for employees to know how much time they're spending. But by productivity, I mean are they being productive during the work environment or during the work setup and able to accomplish the goals and targets which they're assigned.
Yes, Rohit. So for us as a company, what we believe is as long as you give freedom, as long as you give free hand to your rock stars,
right.
whatever goals and milestones assigned to them, you would see a uptick in productivity, because when you as a person feel free to experiment and to innovate, you would do wonders to that work. And I'll give you an example how. Let's say if you are asked to do a work in a particular manner, right? You would reach point A to point B as defined and as directed by your manager. Whereas when you are told, Rohit, I want this to be accomplished, you go to point B, whatever way possible, you will at least think about alternate methods of doing it, right? So expand your horizons of thinking, and then you can, you start thinking about innovating ways to accomplish the same task as previously, in order to save time as well as save resources. And that's what's happened to us. So when we talk about having productivity measured or increased, Hanu did observe that after the 100% work from home since March start, our productivity, Rockstars, engagement of what we call it as the scale of productivity, has seen an uptake of around 23%. And that's phenomenal, because you did not do something extraordinary to achieve those results. And what we see is just about, you did not question them, you did not kept eye on anybody. Okay, are you doing this or not? Because when all rock stars of Hanu felt so free that all they were focused on achieving those results, irrespective how they do it. And that's what I think worked in favor of us, or companies like us, in able to achieve higher productivity for the same results.
Right. And do you think, are there any other metrics which HR managers can use to measure employee engagement? There could be surveys or something else, but are there any metrics that Hanu Software also looks at measuring employee engagement?
Yes, Rohit. We are a very innovative company when it comes to Rockstars engagement happiness. Quite a while ago, and still, we have a role called Rockstar Happiness Officer, right? So this is something we did even a few weeks back, around 5-6. And surveys and all, these are very old methodologies which came in the era of, when you talk about around 10 years back. So I remember even almost a decade back, Hanu had these mood indicators at our front exit and entry gates, where if any rockstar coming to Hanu, he or she is not feeling good or bad or whatever the emotions were, all they need to do is press that mood indicator button on that device we have installed. So what it did in general, that it gave us as HR real-time information about what's happening on a particular day in the general mood of workforce. So and imagine that we did in around a decade back. So now what I feel is being that gauging the workforce and mood and all that, you have to keep innovating. So what we did is we implemented OKRs. That's a milestone-based approach where your constant achievements are observed. We also use Yammer very extensively, which is a social platform. Our emphasis and core emphasis is on rewards and recognition as well. There is a system of badges. There's a system of rewards, which peer-to-peer, peer-to-company. There are many methods we use. In general, we are very conducive and we are very engaged in this approach. So whatever avenues are there, we are never hesitant to experiment and we are never hesitant to innovate.
Interesting. And Amit, I quickly want to do the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
Sorry, top 3 what?
I want to ask you, what's your favorite business book?
Oh, okay. I have to admit, and very embarrassed to admit, that I'm not a book reader.
Okay.
So I'm the laziest person you say who go and hold the book and read that. But to answer that, I'm equally passionate about documentaries, series, anything comes up which is informative in a sense. So that's how it goes. But I'm sorry, Rohit, I'm not a vivid book reader, but I think the last book I read, other than what my job requires me to do, was in my college time. That out of force habit.
Okay, correct. And do you follow any HR leader or CEO whom you admire, and the listeners can also listen?
Yes, there are many personalities, not necessarily in HR, which I'm very impressed with. Right? I keep following the wisdom of those leaders. I feel were really influential during their time. They're not necessarily from this time, but I see the Tesla was one among that personality who I feel was very underestimated of this time.
Right.
His work has kind of contributed enormously to the development of humankind. With the current thing, I say I admire Satya Nadella, and as well as for me, I think Mukesh Ambani is also on my list, where I see him turning around all the business environment within Hanu and producing. Above all, I feel as a group. For me, Tatas are, I admire most, and Ratan Tata, of course, being a philanthropist, being a person of wisdom and dignity. He also is one inspires me most, and I keep following what they say.
Absolutely, that's a great list. And what is one piece of advice would you give to young HR leaders who are either graduating out during these tough times, or they're looking to build their careers in HR and want to be a HR leader like you?
A very relevant question, Rohit, and I would say since very attached to this topic itself, you have to be resilient. What it means, all the budding HR professionals who are coming to industry, there is no quick success step, right? It all comes from the hard work. It all comes from the time. So at times you feel it's not worth. And I've seen it happening to me, my friends and all that. So even if you hit a small hurdle, small speed breaker, you just surrender yourself. And that's what I think is the most grave mistake we do to our professional life. So my advice, and one piece of statement I would make, that do not lose your compassion. Just be resilient. Be the confident enough so as whatever comes to your path, whatever you feel has not gone right as per your expectation, it's just one small step taking you towards your goal. It's not which is taking away to your goal. And if you keep this thing in mind, nobody can stop you. You just need to keep working in that one direction which you are very passionate about, of course, which is HR, and be resilient about it.
Got it. And Amit, what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about you?
Rohit, sorry, no, I think I have a bad connection, but I keep losing you. Can you repeat that?
What is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about you?
Oh, sorry, Bob. It's something. I'm really sorry about this.
No worries.
I'm on many platforms, but I would prefer LinkedIn, which is I'm most active on. If you see, I keep engaged on many other activities over this platform. So if you want anything, or if anybody wants to reach out, I think just ping me on LinkedIn. I would be very happy to reply you over that.
Okay, thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks, Rohit. Pleasure is all mine. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for new episodes.